Coming to you from ringside, it's Dear Watchers, an omniversal comic book podcast where we do a deep dive into the multiverse.
We are traveling with you through the rings that make up the omniverse of fictional realities we all love. And your watchers on this journey are me, Guido, and I didn't come up with a good wrestling name for this. I don't know. I'm thinking like Mucha Lucha. I don't know, but I don't know those names either. So I don't know. Guido the Great. No, what about Gold Dust? Gold Dust Guido. There we go.
Gold Dust Guido.
Gold
I was gonna
Dust
say
Guido.
like Guido Insane Ches.
No, I'm Gold Dust Guido. What are you?
Oh gosh, I don't know.
You've got the rebar in your name.
I could be.
You
I
could be like
just
Steel Rebar.
I could just be Rob Rebar, but I have come out with a real Rebar.
But your
that's my
nickname needs
gimmick.
to be Steel. Rob Steel Rebar.
Okay. But that doesn't have the alliteration. It needs to be
No,
another
that's
R
true.
in there.
We'll work on
Riveting
it. We'll
Rob
workshop
Rebar.
it.
Yeah. See, we will. Yes. Before we begin our trip into the multiverse, Guido, what's new in our little section of comicdom?
Well, recently Superman, Spider-Man came out, and we want to know what our listeners think. We covered the Batman, Deadpool, Batman series last year. This is the latest version of Marvel and DC's team up books. And so we'll cover, there's the second part of it. They alternate publishers, as everyone well knows. So the Marvel version of the book will be out in a few weeks from when we're recording. So we'll cover both of them when that comes out. You haven't even read it yet, so you're going to
No.
have to read them together. And otherwise, just a reminder that we have another podcast. So go check out the Sleepover Retro Countdown Show, audio wherever you're listening to us right now. Or for that one, we even have video if you really want to see us really badly.
We just did movie intros on a recent episode, and you, in your brilliant editing, actually got the intros into the video so you can see our faces and see the intros at the same time.
It was a fun use of our video format. And yeah, we hope you go check it out and enjoy that.
But if you're checking out this podcast for the first time, we have 3 parts of our journey through the multiverse today: origins of the story, exploring multiversity, and pondering possibilities. So thanks for coming along.
And remember, even though we're 5 years old, I think our anniversary is it's very soon.
August, right?
We still want, no, June or July.
June?
But
okay.
Regardless, we still want your 5-star reviews. We still want you to follow us on social media. We still want you to spread the word. So thank you for your 5-star reviews wherever you're listening.
And with that, dear watchers, welcome to episode 178. And let's check out what's happening in the Omniverse with our Travel Today's alternate universe. Today we are entering the steel cage death match of
Texas death match. It's a Texas death match.
Yes, but we
use the lingo of the people we're talking about. We haven't seen a steel cage yet.
No,
I don't know if that exists. That's out of date.
Anyway, we're answering the question: what if the wrestlers of AEW
Elite Wrestling
teamed up with DC, that's Detective Comics, heroes for the ultimate
Direct Currents is what they're later then.
Okay. Anyway, for the Ultimate Championship Brawl.
Yes. This is an Elseworlds, I guess. It could be canonical.
Maybe.
We could let it be Earth Prime. We'll see. This is so far a single appearance. It's never been repeated, but I bet we're going to see it again, and we'll talk all about that. In terms of our discussions of these Earths past, we have never discussed a wrestling Earth before or a wrestling property, so that's going to be new. We have discussed DC endlessly, and there's a lot of DC in this book, needless to say. So you can always go to dearwatchers.com and click episodes and search through our evergreen back catalog to find other DC episodes for your favorite characters.
But today we're talking wrestling, and I want to know, Guido, what's your background with wrestling? Because we both kind of grew up in what I'd say, and we're not wrestling experts
Peak.
by any means, but I would say probably the golden age of wrestling, or when wrestling really became
Well, I don't know if it was golden. It
mainstream,
might have been the Renaissance
the
because I feel like
Renaissance.
golden was like the 40s and
Yeah.
50s,
But
but
this
I
was
guess I
when
don't
it
know.
really got into pop culture. They were
Became,
on
yeah, became a media
commercials,
phenomenon.
they were movie stars, they were had toys.
Yeah, regular people knew everyone's
Yes,
names.
exactly.
Yeah. Well, we mentioned this on our last episode very briefly that we're starting to get into wrestling, and I think we'll talk more about that as we dive into AEW. But background wise, I never liked it ever. I was, like you said, around it. One of my best comic book friends growing up in elementary and middle school, he really loved wrestling, but it was like where we diverged. So we overlapped on comics, and then he would go off and like wrestling, and I didn't care. And I didn't want the trading cards. I didn't want to watch it on TV. But I think because there weren't a critical mass of people around me that liked it, it just never permeated me. So
Hmm.
other than the stuff like Hulk Hogan or I don't even know if Mr. T was a wrestler, but Mr. T.
I don't think he was
But
really a
then
wrestler.
even like
No.
a deeper cuts like a Sergeant Slaughter,
Yeah.
like and then certainly when I was in high school was like the new era, I think it was called the New
Well, there
Order
was
or
the
something.
NWO,
New World
and
Order, yeah.
yeah, and
So
then
when I
yeah.
was in high school, that was big, and that was popular stylistically.
Hmm.
So people loved like Stone Cold Steve Austin and like
Yes.
his, I don't even know if he had catchphrases. I have no idea. But that like started to permeate culture again. But at that point, I was in high school, I was a teenager. So it was around me. I knew these people's names. I knew they were merchandised. I did not know anything else about it. Fast forward to my 45th year of life. And that's when I started to get into it for the first time ever, which is this year with you. We've been watching AEW, and we'll talk a lot about why that is uh, something we took up. But that's my background is going 44 years with never having any exposure, direct exposure to wrestling, and then suddenly becoming a fan. What about you?
Yeah, it's pretty similar to your story. I also had a really good friend that who was really into GI Joes, and I played with all the time, who was a big wrestling fan. So I got a lot of the wrestling characters through osmosis with him, and I'm sure we watched it together, but I never went back and would watch it on my own or really become obsessed with those characters. I think at the time they were in such pop culture that even ones that aren't like giant stars, like Jake the Snake Roberts or someone like that, like you knew who that was because they
Or
were just
yeah,
out
well,
there.
and commercials like Macho Man Randy Savage
Yes,
did all the
snap into a Slim
commercials.
Jim. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, they were just everywhere.
Yeah, yeah.
But
And
did you
then
have the
like you
toys?
I never had any of the toys.
Okay,
No, I
because
did
I
not. But
didn't
again, my friend
actually.
did, and he also had the wrestling buddies. That's what I really remember.
Uh-huh.
And if anyone doesn't know what these are, they're like, what would you say? Like they're 2 feet tall, and
Yeah,
they're
foot and a half
stuffed.
pillows,
Yeah,
and they're meant that you
pillows,
can sort of
basically.
wrestle them in the
Yes,
bed, I guess. I don't
I
know.
guess that's
It
true.
was a
Yeah, but
weird conceit, but it was really fun. And then of course they made like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles ones, which are the ones I
yeah.
had. But
Hmm. And then, like you said, I think it was kind of something that was super in the mainstream, and then it became kind of almost like, I don't know, weirder kids at middle school who were still into it then. And then maybe it had a renaissance again, where I remember so many people on the playground or whatever saying like, "Do you smell what the Rock is cooking?" Like that was like, such a big
that
catchphrase
sounds
again.
like he's like making drugs. Was that his
That was
catchphrase?
his catchphrase. Do you
Sounds
smell
like,
what the Rock is cooking?
you cook crack rocks, right?
Yeah,
Like
that's true. And he had the expletive
he would like do the
X,
X's over
yeah,
his crotch.
crotch.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah. So people would
yeah.
do that and get in trouble for doing that. I remember. And then felt like it fell into the background again. I didn't really follow it at all until you and I just got into AEW recently.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think why do you think you didn't get into it?
I don't know because it had all the elements of
Hmm.
things that I should get into, the storylines, superhero stuff, and then obviously like, little gay boy not knowing that, obviously, but all the homoeroticism of wrestling. So I don't know. And then there's certainly like even if you take some of that out, there's just a flamboyance to so many of the characters as
Hmm.
well. So I'm surprised as someone who was super into musical theater, even at that age, that superheroes and musical theater, like if you put those two together, you kind of get wrestling. And yet I don't know why I didn't get into it more.
Well, I think on the surface, it is very masculine,
Yeah.
heteronormative, even probably misogynistic and homophobic. And so I'm sure for me, I'm sure that was a turnoff. I didn't like a lot of man things. I still to this day don't. And so I think that's probably a part of it. But yeah, you don't need to scratch very deep to get to get past that. I remember the other big thing that I never understood or couldn't really reconcile, I guess because it's been branded a sport, and of course it is a sport. It requires
Yes.
so much athleticism, but the fakeness of it
Yes.
was something I never got. I was like, why do people like this? It's fake. Like they're not getting hurt, and the outcome is predetermined. Why is there enjoyment here? And I think I just didn't get that and sort of wrote it off. And now, of course,
Yeah.
I do get that and appreciate that, and we'll get into
I think that's
why,
a
I'm sure.
big
But
big part of it is I remember there were so many debates at the time, or my parents or whoever saying like, how can you like that? It's fake. And I think that stigma stood with them. And even from, this is a weird tangent, but one of my favorite bands and one of our friend Lisa Gullickson's favorite bands is the Monkees. And it was the same, like people always said, like, oh, the Monkees don't write their own songs or play their own instruments. Well, for the most part, they did, but he didn't at the beginning. And still to this day, that stigma is with them. And I think it's the same thing with wrestling. It's like, okay, maybe obviously who wins the match is rigged, but you're watching it and like these people are doing these amazing flips and they're getting hit, like all of that is real, like even if part of it was
yeah, even if
artificial
they're
and
not getting
created.
beat up, like it's not UFC or mixed martial
Yes.
arts. But I mean, that person did die doing it. Like it is
Yeah.
it is a feat of athleticism and
Hmm.
people can get hurt. So yeah, a whole lot of interesting layers that we've started to peel back that I'm sure many of our listeners had already dealt with because we have a lot
Yes.
of listeners that are fans. So
Well, it's just coming in right now that Tony Khan has approved our first story of the day, and it is time for origins of the story.
Right now, on this very show, you're going to get the answer to all your questions. Our amazing story begins a few years ago.
So, first up, it is AEW Origins Special Edition number 1 from DC Comics. This came out in January 2025.
this is written by Steve Orlando with a whole batch of pencilers and inkers because it's a series of stories introducing the AEW characters. So we have Edwin Gallman, Laura Blaga, Leonardo Rodriguez, Serge Acuna, and Pop Mon on penciling, and the same group doing their own inks, colored by Hi-Fi Design, lettered by Josh Reed, edited by Michael McAllister. This was kind of a promo book. It was actually
Hmm.
released digitally free a few months prior. Warner Brothers has a large stake in All Elite Wrestling. They don't own them outright, but they have a large stake. I don't know if this was I don't know when that happened. Our listeners should take note that we don't know a lot of the history, nor do we claim to. So I don't know when the Warner Brothers stake happened and if this followed that or if this was years
But
later.
on
I really have
TV,
no idea.
the AEW airs on Warner Brothers owned network.
Yes,
So
yes. And again,
there's always that
because
synergy
Warner
there.
has a stake in it. So this comic again was meant to be a promo. So who do we get to meet in this
Yeah, so
book?
we get to meet a number of wrestlers, a couple of which we don't really know, Guido, but
Nope. Nope.
but some of the other ones are super big names within AEW that now we've become super familiar with, and that is Swerve Strickland, Timeless Tony Storm, Will Ospreay, Dr. Britt Baker, DMD,
No idea.
Orange Cassidy, and Darby Allen.
Yeah. So this is it's a fine book. It's strictly pro. I mean, each character has 2 pages,
Hmm.
probably, right? 2 pages to introduce some concept of them. They're not Steve Orlando, who is a huge wrestling fan. I've known that as someone who's followed his work for years, so it wasn't a surprise that he stepped into this. But he's not trying to tell any stories or anything. He's trying to just introduce these characters.
Yeah. And what you and I don't know, and again, maybe huge fans of this will know, is what part of these backstories are things that they've already built up. So, for example, for folks who don't know, Timeless Tony Storm, who's one of our all-time favorites in the
She's my
AEW,
all-time favorite.
your all-time favorite.
That was
Yeah,
easy.
so her gimmick is that she's obsessed with old Hollywood. She's almost shown in black and white. She speaks like an old-timey Hollywood Norma Desmond kind of starlet. And here her backstory is that she grew up left to her own devices and watching classic Hollywood on TV. And then she kind of became obsessed with it. So I don't know if that
No,
is,
I don't know either.
Timeless Tony Storm, the actual wrestling character's
Hmm.
backstory, or if that's something that Steve Orlando added for here. But it does give that classic superhero backstory of little girl left alone watching old Hollywood movies becomes obsessed with wanting to be a old Hollywood star.
Yeah, and so I guess that's what he's doing. He's giving an origin story to the fictional character. I guess zooming out, assuming there might be someone listening who doesn't like wrestling like you and I didn't as of 5 months ago, like what's so fascinating is these are fake characters built by real people. And in that
Mm-hmm.
way, you and I have compared this show a lot to Drag Race. It's very drag queen. It's very similar to drag queens in that this is someone who's developed a persona and it might have something to do with who they are as a person, but you don't know. It's a fictional character layered on top of that person. In some cases, people are using their real names, and in some cases, they're using fake names, which is
Yeah.
also, again, the same as drag queens. Some drag queens make a name based on their real name, and some make up complete other names, and you don't even really know who their real name is without investigating it. So it's
Yeah,
just
and,
so
and
interesting.
sometimes it's funny too because Will Ospreay, that is his real name, so he goes by his real name. But other people might have like John Moxley, who's not in this, but will be in our other issue. Like John Moxley, that sounds like like a regular, could be his name, but that's not his name.
It's totally
Like,
made up. Yeah.
so they have these names that even sound like they're real, but they're not actually their real name. And then other people with a completely made up name, obviously like Orange Cassidy, like or Darby Allin, which is two punk rockers' names that have been put together. So like those are completely made up, and then other
Yeah.
ones that are real, and then other ones that sound like they're real, but they're not real.
So, yeah, it's such an interesting idea to like turn these characters into characters with backstories because otherwise, I don't even know where you get their backstories. I mean, this is part of why I
Hmm.
think it also took us so long to enter into the ring, which is, I mean, for me, what I've loved about wrestling now is it is drag queens plus comic books plus soap operas. And it's
Hmm.
those 3 things. And in both the comic book and the soap opera side of it, it feels impenetrable because it's like, how do I get
Yes.
into this? Like, how am I going to know who these people are? So I
And
think this
that's
issue
with
is trying to develop that a little.
Yeah, and that's with Wikipedia now. I mean, if you think when we were growing up
Oh,
and that
yeah. You just
wasn't
have to
even
start
in, you
watching.
just had to
Yeah.
start watching it and hope that osmosis and things kind of came through. Now, at least you can look this up, and even then, it's still very difficult. So I can see that being a big hurdle, and definitely probably why DC and AEW decided to start with this kind of issue to introduce these characters.
Yeah. So it's fun. It's a fun origin. I wouldn't recommend it. I don't think anyone's going to read this issue and be like, "Oh, I want to be a fan of these people." Like it's too brief and it's also again because it's promo like, the art isn't amazing. Like it's
Yeah.
rushed. It so I think this is a fine origin issue, but I think it's for existing fans to meet their characters in comics. It's not for someone to become a fan of these characters.
Yeah, and I think for the one that stood out to me, and I think this character also stood out to me in the next two issues that we're gonna read, is Orange Cassidy. And because so for folks who don't know,
My
Orange
second favorite
Cassidy,
character.
yeah, he dresses in he fights in jeans and has like a jean jacket and aviator sunglasses and like slick back hair. He's
He's
like,
like
I
a
don't know, like
California bro. Like I don't
California
even know
yacht
what.
rock, like
Yeah, like a Ryan Gosling
yes, very
Ken
much
type.
that kind of
But
yeah.
I don't know what that you call that. So let's go with
And a lot of these
California.
other
Cool bro.
stories in here where they were beaten up as a kid, they started to learn how to fight, like stuff that we've probably seen before. But Orange Cassidy is like he's walking along and he finds a pair of aviator sunglasses somewhere, and like it like makes him transforms him like into the Orange Cassidy, that the fighter that we then know. So like that one stood out as opposed to like some of the other ones where it's like he's a street kid and he learns how to fight. It's like that is not too dissimilar from a DC regular character, but his was definitely much more fantastical in that way.
Well, this is where I think having Steve Orlando write this is a good thing because as a fan, it totally fits for Orange Cassidy's cool guy character to not have some overcomplicated origin, right? Like he's a cool guy. It's like there's not a lot to say about him. He just is cool. That's his thing.
Yeah.
So everything is at ease, and he does this thing where he fights with his hands in his pockets, and it's actually quite cool choreographically. But yeah, I think it fits that he has this origin that's like completely a non-event because he is that kind of character. So
Yeah.
that's where it's fun that they had a fan doing this.
Well, let's move on to round two. It's exploring multiversity.
I am your guide through these vast new realities. Follow me and ponder the question, what if?
So this is exploring multiversity with AEW.
Well, it's DC by like X, like
Yeah.
I don't know, DC by AEW or DC
I don't know how you said
and
the A. How you say the
AEW.
X? Yes, sure. Well, no, issues 1 and 2. This is the Forbidden Door saga. That's random. Having read this and had not seen that title, I don't know where that's coming from.
It's weird.
Anyway, as you already know, it's from DC Comics, and this came out very recently, April and May 2026.
And both issues are written by Steve Orlando. Both issues have art, pencils, and inks by Travis Mercer, though he gets some support on inks by John Livesay in the second issue. Both issues are colored by Andrew Dahlhaus, lettered by Josh Reed, and edited again by Mike McAllister. So let's give a little breakdown of how this plays out for our listeners.
Yes. So there is well, we kind of thrown right into the action right here. We have Excalibur, who is a AEW announcer and former
wrestler too.
Former wrestler. He wears like a lucha libre mask, and Booster Gold. They're hosting the match, and a match has already been won. But then the belt breaks because the
championship belt, which
championship
happens
belt,
like every
sore
episode.
Loser.
There's like a championship belt getting passed around.
And in this world, the belt is made out of element X, and that actually must be tracked down because it's thrown all over the universe.
Yeah. So this leads to the Justice League or some version of it, and AEW characters
League Elite. Well, then it becomes
teaming up. So it is Nightwing with Will Ospreay fighting the League of Assassins. It's Guy Gardner, Green Lantern, with John Moxley fighting the Mutant Gang. Hawkgirl with Hangman Adam Page fighting Evil Puritans from Limbo.
Yes.
It's Green Lantern John Stewart with Swerve Strickland fighting Deimos. Orange Cassidy with Harley Quinn fighting the Royal Flush Gang. Zatanna and Timeless Tony Storm fighting Johnny Sorrow. Willow Nightingale and Wonder Woman fighting Echidna. I don't know, whatever that snaky name is. Batman and Darby Allin fighting Joker. Kenny Omega fighting Bane. And Aquaman and Mercedes Monet fighting the Trench and then ultimately encountering Lex But then, and spoiler
But
alert, big twist,
Mercedes actually turns on Aquaman and partners with Lex Luthor,
which
and
I think is
that
something that happens in the AEW. We don't know Mercedes very well, but I think
no.
she's known to be sort of A, do anything for money is what I understand when I looked her up, and B, turn even though she's a hero, if you will.
Yes. So now we have to, in basically the second issue, wrap up those fights, bring all of our characters back together. We also get an appearance from Sting. Every breath you
Not
take.
not the police singer.
Not the police Sting. That was so Sting goes way back to WWE. He was a character I knew when I was growing up, and
His
he's
face
still in the
looked
world.
familiar to me, but I didn't
Yeah.
know him by name when
Yeah. He
when Batman
basically
called him
looks like the
Sting. I was
Crow.
like, I don't know. Yeah, I maybe that's why he seemed
Yeah.
familiar to me. Yeah.
Well, he shows up. He's Darby Allin's mentor, and he helps stop the Joker. And then, kind of in our big climax, Kenny Omega becomes the god of wrestling, thanks to the mother box and some other mumbo jumbo in there. And they defeat Lex and Mercedes, but in like this art, in this
In restoring
sacrifice,
the belt or whatever.
restoring the belt, Kenny actually gives up all that power, and everything's resolved, and the Justice League go off their merry way, but maybe they'll come back together again in the future.
So I loved this. I really liked these two issues. I thought they were fun. I thought they had a good pace. I thought, as someone who's getting into these characters, there was more than enough in those brief moments where I saw the characters I know, and it made me want more. What did you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's these are jam packed because as you heard from Guido reading all those names, there's a lot of characters in here. So they basically kind of like the Origins issue. They get 2 pages per issue, basically, not a whole lot. Maybe someone like Batman gets a little bit more, but you get who they are in those, and they have good pairings. Sometimes it's a pairing that goes together well, like Willow Nightingale, who's one of like the good guys in AEW, with Wonder Woman. Like they're both very righteous, so that makes sense. And then other times you get a little bit of a tension in some of the other characters in a fun way. So I think that was all designed super smartly.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the pairings, I mean, some of them, it's funny because watching the, I don't know, 200 hours of wrestling we've watched so far, just from trying to catch up 2026, there are many matches that are boring to us and clearly meant to be boring. Like they're meant to almost be breaks in the more dynamic characters. So this has some of that, I think. Like I'm sure someone really liked reading the Guy Gardner, John Moxley stuff, but like it's not very exciting. It's really, I think, when you get into the well, Batman and Darby Allin are really fun just because I'm enjoying Darby Allin. But Orange Cassidy and Harley Quinn was probably my favorite here
That's
because
definitely really good. And
they
again,
have so much character.
they have a lot. The two of them definitely, and I could see that Steve Orlando invested a lot because both of them have really funny lines, and Harley keeps calling him something else with his name, like she calls him Clementine or something all along those lines to make fun of the orangeness. So that one, the other one I think that stood out to me a lot was Hawk Girl and Hangman Adam Page, and in part there because Hangman is skeptical of Hawk Girl's backstory, that she's actually lived all
That's
these
cute.
lives. And so I kind of liked that idea as well of put someone, I was like, wait, you, and she gives him these guns that were from like uh Butch Cassidy or something like that, right? And like he's like, no, you didn't really get these from from Billy the Kid or whoever it is. So I thought that was really fun.
Well, and it's fun again because even though he's not one of my favorite characters in AEW, it it really speaks to who he is. He's supposed to be like this grounded sort of everyman who looks at things with with I don't know, with a sense of certainty in reality. He's a less flamboyant character. He's
Yes.
grounded in reality. So like him doing that with Hawk Girl speaks to who he is as a character. Because then you have like Tony Storm and Zatanna, which was my other favorite, of course. But that one is really fun too because she is a bisexual wrestler, and I love that she's just constantly flirting with Zatanna. Like, cannot
Yes.
stop herself from flirting with Zatanna up to the very end.
And there's lots of entendres that are
Hmm
thrown in
hmm
there as well, which
Yeah, which
are
also
very
fits with
fun.
how she speaks as
Hmm.
you described.
Yeah.
So again, I just think having Steve Orlando do this gets each of these characters to have some personality, even for someone like Will Ospreay, who is just, I think, starting to return, and we're a few weeks behind now, so we haven't even met him. But I got a sense a little bit of who he is already from reading this, and that's really fun that that was able to translate. Same thing with Mercedes. Mercedes and Will are the two that you and I really don't know well here. The rest
Hmm.
I felt pretty confident in my knowledge of so far.
Yes. No, I definitely agree. And I think the Batman Darby Allin, as you said, is great because you can see shades of that with Batman with other characters because Darby Allin he's a good guy, but he's kind of like dark and had, his face is like half a skull and he wields a skateboard as his weapon. So you can kind of see that character being some of the Robins as well, like this
Yeah, and
troubled
Joker
youth that
says that a
Batman
lot,
is
and
with.
Joker
Hmm.
teases him.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really fun dynamic too. Yeah, and the villains are interesting. I'm curious if this was an editorial decision or if this was a Steve Orlando decision. Like he chose extremely unknown villains, with the exception of Joker and Lex, of course. You
I
have
was surprised when I saw Joker because everyone else were these third tier.
not even third tier. I mean, the Limbo Puritans, like we had to look up, and he created this character out of a story from a Grant Morrison
Who
run.
also is one of the coolest looking ones
He
in there.
was very cool. I
And
agree.
he's basically
But
like an evil semi-zombie Puritan, like witchfinder kind of character. Like I want to see more of that character because he just looked cool.
and then Echidna like debuted in one of those giant, which I think was like a Walmart exclusive like 10 years ago in a Wonder Woman story, but like has never been used
Yeah.
since. So
And you
it's
didn't
just,
even know who Johnny Sorrow
I
was, who
did not
actually
know,
I
which
love
is
because
very
he's got a
cool.
really
Yeah,
cool design and
he
he
does.
was a big character in the Jeff Johns JSA storyline there. But yeah, again,
So I don't
he
know
is.
why he's pulling so deep off the bench here. I
Mhm.
don't know if it's a decision or editorial. It would work if it's a narrative decision because what it does is it foregrounds the AEW
It does.
DC team
Yeah.
up and backgrounds the villain. I think if you had more Jokers, you couldn't really do that on a two-page
Hmm.
story, which these are like two-page stories, with the exception of Batman, perhaps in part because of Joker, and then of course because of Sting showing up. You get it, it stretches a little more. So maybe he felt like he needed these sort of generic background
Yeah.
villains because he didn't want to take away from what was happening.
And Bane makes sense, obviously, because he's a wrestler. Like you think he's
Hmm
wearing a lucha libre mask. But yeah, even that character who's such a like icon, it gets a pretty small, actually smaller screen time than even some of these other characters as well.
Yeah. Well, and I love too, we only just encountered this in what were we watching, but speaking of Bane and Kenny Omega, I love that Kenny Omega becomes the god because that's what he calls himself. Like
Hmm.
again, Steve Orlando is drawing upon so much knowledge that he has clearly of all of these people that it's just funny because we just heard Kenny Omega having this fight with, I don't know who it was at that point, but that he is the god of wrestling, and now
Yes.
he's washed up because
Yeah.
of course he's in his 60s and a much older wrestler, which is also
He's
very
not in
cool.
his 60s. He's in like his 40s.
No, maybe. It's so hard to tell all their
In
ages.
age-wise, it is very hard to tell, but no, he's not in his 60s.
He's been around a
Sting
while.
is
I don't
like in
know.
his 60s. We haven't seen Sting on the show yet, but yeah. Now, the one thing I kept hoping for, and maybe they're saving this for the sequel, because I figured maybe they wanted, again, we don't really know Mercedes, and they wanted maybe a female villain here. But if anyone knows AEW, there is the main villain, I'd say, of AEW basically looks exactly like Lex Luthor. So his name's Don Callis, and he's
Yeah.
like this bald villain who wears suits and he's kind of controlling a lot of the
Well, he's
things.
one of
And
the managers,
yeah,
so I
but
guess it
he's
was hard to get the managers into this
yeah,
story, but
but he's very Luther-like. So I was like, oh, maybe for a sequel, if we get Luther and Don
hmm
Callis together and kind of have, there's a lot of humor I think that could be had from like these two bald manipulators that are running everything.
yeah. Yeah, I agree. And part of me thinks this has to have been a proving ground. I think the promo issue was probably a bit of a proving ground at the first in the first place. And then I think doing this two issue, they're seeing how it does. Now I don't know how it did, honestly. I do know what's cool is AEW actually released this in a treasury sized edition that you could only get through AEW. So
Mm.
it they clearly leaned into this partnership. I don't, they did a bunch of variant covers. We got some of them like with Wonder Woman and Tony Storm and stuff like that of the regular issues last month when this all was coming out. So
And
I think if it does well, they'll keep going.
I'd say like Travis Mercer's art, it's got like almost a simplicity to it. Like there's something about it that I feel like is kid friendly.
Yeah, it's clean and cartoonish.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
I
can
don't
tell who
like,
everyone is. Like there's good details, especially knowing who some of these the real people are, so they have those likenesses. But at the same time, it's not overly detailed. There is that cartoonish element to it.
you can tell that it was the second issue was rushed to press. That's probably why they brought the other inker in. And I think that that does take away from his art, quite honestly. But it's fine. It's just it's like it's almost like every other page you can tell there's less definition and
Mm-hmm.
less sharpness with the inks, but it doesn't take away too much from it. So I think this is a great issue. Do you think someone who has never watched AEW could pick this up and read it and it might make them curious?
I don't really think so. I
Okay.
think this is something that needs to be watched. Now, maybe the previous issue we discussed, I think that could be that, and I'm sure that was their purpose. But no, this I think you really do have to know who the characters are, at least most of them. Like, again,
Yeah,
we
I
don't
guess
know who
because you're
all
not
of them
spending
are.
so much time. There's not a lot of character development here. So you
And I
really
don't
have to
think you
know.
need to be a massive fan like you and I who are still kind of getting into this world. So it's not like you need to be, this is just for the hardcore people. Definitely not that. But I don't think you can go into this without having at least some knowledge of AEW.
Yeah, probably true.
Okay, well, before we get our three count, we're gonna wrap up with some pondering possibilities.
Will the future you describe be averted, averted, averted?
So, Guido, what are we talking about for pondering possibilities?
I don't know. Let's just speculate. There is no future issue. This is hot off the presses. So, what would we want from another DC AEW series? Do we think this kind of team up matchup makes sense? Should AEW have its own line of comics? Just do these characters can they carry stories on their own? Do they need to be teamed up with DC? Let's just talk about some possibilities we might want to ponder.
Yeah, I definitely think it can sustain its own. Now, whether they can do that without these other characters, I do think there needs to be an elevated superhero element to it.
Right. You have to give them powers or you have to
Yeah,
add some fantastical element. That's definitely
exactly.
true.
Yeah, or even if they don't have powers, some kind of they're trying to save the world. There's going to be a life-threatening explosion, something like that. That adds it more than just the wrestling. But I think the good thing is like I was just reading this, going, oh, there's all these other characters that I like that I haven't even seen in here. So like superhero comics, the good thing is you have all this time to keep
hmm
adding in other ones. We didn't really most they really leaned into the faces or the good guys here on the in this two issues, so we didn't even get to see a lot of like the heels, the villains of AEW. So that's a whole nother thing right there, is introducing a lot of the more villainous characters.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think you're right to think about people like Don Callis who could team up with Lex Luthor, and there are these certain pairings that they could keep doing to build out the world. I don't think every series needs to have the earth-shattering Deus Ex Machina or red herring or MacGuffin or whichever thing it is that this is, where like the belt is element X and they're going to reshape reality with it. It's like, okay, you don't need every story to have that. You can just find, almost like the Superman, Spider-Man, or Batman, Deadpool one-shots. Like, just find little ways to tell these stories. No explanation needed. Because they are such good characters to incorporate.
And I also wonder what are your thoughts on seeing this almost the other way around? Do you think there could be some DC elements that go into AEW?
What does that mean?
So, well, I'm thinking the most obvious one that I thought is like, is there a way that you could actually incorporate Jason Momoa in or out of Lobo costume into like an AEW storyline, because
oh my
he's
gosh.
so wrestler like. Lobo is such an an AEW kind of wrestling character. So, and then kind of go that way where there's some kind of tie in there. And maybe maybe he's not Lobo, maybe he's just Jason Momoa, like, because everyone knows who he is. But like, I wonder if they'd be into doing something that in that direction.
I'll be curious. I think it's a good time to tell, because AEW is on the rise. I mean, as a company that's only, I think, 7 years old, they're doing great and becoming a huge, probably multi-billion-dollar franchise. And we have Supergirl coming out this summer with Lobo, and then we'll have another Superman next year. And so there's all these promotional opportunities, like these moments. It's clear that their relationship to Warner Brothers runs really deep also. So I wouldn't be surprised if they did some promotional thing. I don't know that like Jason Momoa is going to step into the ring, but I don't think
he couldn't do that, but he could be he could be part of a storyline regardless.
Or on an episode of Dynamite or Collision, which are the two weekly shows for AEW, if on an episode of that there's like a little video interstitial that has
exactly
Millie Acock or whatever her name is, Supergirl, like has her, talking to Marina Shafir or something like that.
Totally, that too, and Jason Momoa specifically like feels so well primed to do something that, and I think Supergirl also, because it's a bit more of an offshoot. Like maybe you want to test it with a Supergirl before you go to a Superman as well. Like, I could totally see that playing out there, or maybe even if that's successful, like once the Green Lanterns Guardians show like gets in to roll out something there also. But yeah,
but you also have John Cena. You seem to be forgetting the biggest one when the next Peacemaker comes out.
He probably, I don't know, he might still be on. I know he fought his last match with WWE, but he might have like a lifelong contract of like, I can't go on any other wrestling.
Yeah, maybe. Although, I mean, AEW more closely aligns with his principles too. Part of why we watched it is there's out queer wrestlers where that's not their storyline, and there's women winning titles and there's trans people winning titles, and John Cena is very, very queer, a queer ally, and so WWE's not the place for him, in spite of that evil gay recently winning. But so yeah, I think there's a lot of fun future, and I think if anyone's listened to this episode who, like us, was not watching wrestling, I'd say do it. Go do it. If you like comics, you're gonna like wrestling, and it's perfect background TV, which you and I are not big background TV watchers. We like to be engrossed in a story, which is part of why we don't watch a lot of reality TV outside of Drag Race and such. And so, but this is perfect for someone who wants to like put something on while you're doing something. You can follow these cool characters.
Well, that is a wrap. Ding, 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 ding. So, dear watchers, thank you so much for listening.
Yes, I have been Gold Dust Guido. That's a reference, by the way, to an old, possibly homophobic, possibly not character. Go watch Out in the Ring, the documentary about queer wrestling, because that was really fun.
And I have been the riveting Rob Rebar.
And now you got rivets and rebar.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, like I would have to be. I'd have to have a little construction. Site. Yeah, totally. Yes, I'd be basically the village people. Exactly.
The reading list is in the show notes. You can follow us on all social media at Dear Watchers.
And leave us a 5-star review wherever you listen. We will be back soon with another trip through the multiverse.
In the words of Uatu, keep pondering the possibilities.